Welcome to Radio 5G. This is Michael Henry Dunn with my co-host, Nancy L. Hopkins. And you have yet to ask Nancy what the L stands for. Maybe one of these days we'll find out.
It's Lynn, L-Y-N-N.
Lynn. Oh, okay. All right. That's a nice,
no secret.
Strong, no secret. All right. If I didn't want it to turn out to be something embarrassing like Nancy Lilliputian Hopkins or something, you just never know.
Right.
Anyway, welcome to Radio 5G, folks, which is a joint project of the Sacred Academy of Global Evolution and Cosmic Reality Radio. And we're really glad to welcome today our good friend, Falcon Britt, who's been on the show with us before. And Falcon is one of the really on-fire activists down in Taos, New Mexico, who, along with Jeannie Lotz and Reese Murphy, just did an amazing job in awakening people in Taos to the 5G rollout. More than 300 citizens showed up at the Taos County Commissioner's hearing. More than around 1,000 signatures were given in order to halt the rollout of 5G in Taos, New Mexico, until such time as some independent and respectable study showed that it's not harmful. Of course, they can't do that because it's extremely harmful. And Falcon has many years as an educator, a school teacher. She is also a Reiki master, an animal communicator, trained by the animal communicator for the London Zoo, and is also deeply trained in Andes Peruvian medicine, which was also known as shamanism, and just really amazing person. We are really glad to have you. So welcome to the show, Falcon.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So we're at a pretty interesting point here because the Stop 5G movement is accelerating worldwide in a big way. We've got the 5G Crisis Conference that is currently being put on by, I want to make sure that I am getting the name of the organization correctly, but we'll share that with you in a moment. You could just go to 5gcrisis.com. It's a project of Americans for Responsible Technology, and they're having a really excellent conference with a lot of expert speakers coming up in August. So one of the developments that we'd love to go over, I don't know if you've had a chance to see this, Falcon, but the Swiss magazine has reported the first 5G injuries in Geneva. We're just checking in on the sound here. Am I coming through steadily there, Nancy?
Yeah, I'm afraid that it's Falcon's Skype. It's cutting out on her because I've got a clear signal.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll just keep rolling on then.
Can she hear you enough? Falcon, can you hear him clear enough to hear what he's saying?
I can. I can hear him. It glitches, so sometimes his word will tweak off, and I'll lose the end of the word. But it's fine. Go ahead. I can make it out.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Good. Thank you.
Okay. So what we'd like to cover and share with you all today, several different aspects of what's going on. First, we'd like to share with you this article that just came out from a Swiss magazine, L'Illustré, which is a French language weekly consumer magazine published in Lausanne, Switzerland, on the first reports of injuries from the 5G rollout in Geneva. This is very hardcore evidence of immediate consequences, immediate health consequences experienced by people immediately upon the rollout of 5G. And I also know that Falcon is well acquainted with similar situations in New Mexico and elsewhere with increasing EMF sensitivity which is pretty much like driving people from their homes and offices and even from their careers, because as this rollout continues, and as Mark Steele advised us and said, remember, folks, 5G going in doesn't mean that 3G and 4G go away. It's densification. We're being hit with all of it. And so what's resulting is a lot of people experiencing increased EMF sensitivity. So we're going to cover that with you. And also, as just sort of an overview, many of you who are joining us from Cosmic Reality, and also from SAGE, Sacred Academy of Global Evolution, know that we are definitely covering the big picture energetically, metaphysically, spiritually, in terms of consciousness on the planet, as a crucial aspect of what's unfolding here. It's 5G is one symptom of that big picture. Right now, it's the most lethal symptom. It's the one that carries the greatest threat, not only to human health, but to the biosphere and to our freedom, because it was engineered as a military surveillance and control weapons technology. That's just the reality. So the biggest picture, however, is the metaphysical one. That's where we believe the most effective lever that we can pull to help stop this rollout, that's where the lever is in the realm of our own consciousness and in our keeping up hope and keeping up action and keeping up determination that humanity can prevail over the factions and forces that are behind this rollout. So with that kind of lengthy introduction there, I'd just like to ask you, Falcon, if you could share a little bit with us about your background and how you came to be involved in the Stop 5G movement.
Well, as I said on the earlier show, I found myself and my cat being cooked in Edmonds, Washington. When I finally, after many health problems and many medical bills, began investigating, it turned out all the symptoms were attributable to the EMF. My entire endocrine system tanked. I was having brain fog, couldn't sleep, depression, all kinds of night sweats and just strange symptoms. And then when I checked antennasearch.com, which you can check for America, you put in your address and it will tell you how many antennas, which relay, of course, and how many towers are within 2 or 3 miles of your house. And I had 147 antennas and 20 towers within 2 miles of my house. So the densification of 4G alone was doing so much damage. My cat had to be put down at age 2 because he couldn't recover. And I managed to make it to another state where I thought I would be safer, and came to New Mexico. But what we're seeing now, as you said, is refugees. We've received a call from someone in L.A. saying, I've got to get out of here. This is wrecking my health. Can I come to Taos? And, of course, in Taos, we're fighting the good fight. As you may recall, Ed Vigil at the last meeting was not able to prevail with the council. Well, let me rephrase that. He did prevail, but he said later that he did not feel good about the 5G. And so he was excited that he wanted a citizens committee to come and speak with him about how to set up some ordinances, as they did in Larimer County in Colorado, so that these things could be limited by local ordinances. And unfortunately, he met with Dan to set up the Citizens Advisory Committee, and he was very excited about it. But when he approached the council, he was told that he approached the lawyer and the county planner, and they told him, no, that we have to have some documents from the state. They were not clear about what those documents are or what we're waiting for. And so at this point, it's as though they do not want citizen input. However, that's not going to deter us from attempting to influence this process, because we, the people, under the 10th Amendment, have a right to declare what happens with our land locally and where these antennas can and cannot go. That's Constitution, and you can't override the Constitution with some advisory committee like the FCC, which, as you say, has been co-opted.
Right. And just an update, you were mentioning Larimer County. I recently spoke to the mayor of Crestone, Colorado, where I live, who had attended a conference in Breckenridge of municipal officials from all over Colorado, hundreds of officials. And I had told her about the land use regulations that Larimer County had prepared that could be put in place to restrict the 5G rollout there. And she brought back the unfortunate news that that was a proposal and that it has not carried in Larimer County and is not yet being put into effect. So we're still hopeful, but, it's a battle. So anyway, sorry to interrupt your sharing, with your background and how you came to all this. Just wanted to put that piece of news in there.
Well, I'm sorry, I did verge off into some other stuff there. No, I did train in high Andes Peruvian medicine and have done a lot of shamanic work for land healing and shifting energies, stabilizing landlines, helping to clear the Duamst River. Have worked with some we're working to reconnect animal consciousness with human consciousness. It's my belief that mankind feeling so disconnected from nature is a large part of the problem. We don't feel that it's a part of us. But if we can reconnect that the caring, the level of love and awareness, consciousness will rise tremendously. It's a lot easier to destroy the jungle of an orangutan when you don't know him. If you know Bob and his kids, it's a lot harder to destroy. I'm naming the orangutan Bob, of course. It's a lot easier.
Yeah, we all know Bob, the orangutan. He's a good friend.
So I just believe it does have to do with a raising of consciousness. And, of course, all this difficulty that we're having in even convincing our local officials to protect our health, it is a shock to the system, but this is a time of awakening. This is the end of the Kali Yuga, the age of darkness. And, of course, they're on their way out, and there's nothing more dangerous than a frightened and cornered animal. And at this point, I get the feeling that I call them Team Dark. Team Dark, the lower conscious beings that want to destroy and exploit and use people and the earth and the animals and the forest and the waters wantonly and destructively. It's my belief that they're on their way out, and this is why we're seeing so much egregious behavior from them. It has to come up and out. That's what happens at the end of the Kali Yuga. And so it's I hate to give this, it's a nasty analogy, but the boil has been lanced and all this ugliness is coming out. It's coming out with Jeffrey Epstein, and there will be a lot of revelations that are going to shock a lot of people. But it's actually, in my opinion, it's the worst coming out, not because it's getting worse, but because it's turning to light. People are waking up, and you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Right. I hear what you're saying. And in regard to the Kali Yuga, which for people who may not be familiar with the Vedic concept from India of the yugas, the cycle of ages, which is connected to, just astronomical facts in terms of the 24,000 year cycle of revolution around the central sun of the galaxy. But when you come to the end of Kali Yuga, which is a darker time, we're actually in the next age cycle, which is Dwapara, but we're stuck with a lot of old Kali Yuga institutions, which are not going gently into that good night. They're, going shrieking and screaming. So, yeah, it's just part of the process, but it's already upon us.
Well, sure. It reminds me of the end of World War II when the German nation there was no hope of winning. And instead of surrendering and trying to keep whatever you got, the Nazi party drove it right into the ground. If we don't survive, Germany will not survive. And I don't understand that mindset, but I do see the similarity in what's happening. I
agree, Nancy. It's the kind of the scorched earth policy. that if you lose the battle, you'll just burn all the fields so nobody gets anything. And so it's simply a matter, I think, though, as the light rises, more and more people they're getting off the sofa, they're getting involved, and just saying no. And it's simply a matter of consciousness. One person of higher consciousness has tremendous energetic effect compared to someone of low consciousness. It's simply a matter of frequency. So if we get more numbers of people and they just get together and start working on the issue, it can have tremendous shiftability. And that's, I think, it's funny. Team Dark really wants us to believe that we're powerless. I believe that's why they feed us so much negative news, and it makes you feel helpless and victim-y, and you go into addictions, whether it's video games or drugs or whatever your thing is. But in truth, it's because they know that we're powerful, that they feed us all this negativity and powerlessness BS. Energetically, we can be quite powerful. And once we realize that, and we increasingly do, their time is up. And as Michael said, it is shifting right now.
Well, I think the 5G rollout is an indicator of that. You know, if they had been doing it more stealthily, because they had been doing it stealthily, and they could have had it in and around us before we even knew it. But the desperation of trying to get it out, regardless of the fact that you turned it on. I mean, let's look at what they've done already. They turned it on in South Korea and started 5 cities burning. Okay, that's absolutely a fact. Okay, they turned it on in Gateshead, and they've got, increases up to 65% on heart problems, and never mind the other stuff. But if you just look at the amount of damage that's been done in a very short period of time, well, you're tipping your hand. Now we can point to stuff, and now we got this Swiss thing that I really do want to talk about, because it gets into the specifics that you very well know. But this is a country that, for a lot of reasons, it's mind-bending what's happening, and it's across the world. I mean, China's already got the 5G, so what it is an indicator of we're winning. And let's keep going, because it's a whole change in reality. And
yes,
reality is what we think it is, so let's think good.
Yeah, and on the etheric level, which is, and let me explain what that is for the general audience, that the etheric level is a higher frequency. There are levels of frequency, and there's a causal plane where things begin, they get initiated, and then it comes down through the layers into density. We are in a very dense layer. 3D has been a very dense layer of energy. But it begins in the higher levels, and then it comes down through the etheric. The etheric level is like the template. And what we're being told by numerous people who have checked and have the ability to travel around these levels is we've already won. On the etheric level, we've won the war. It's simply coming into density now. It's densifying. And, of course, part of our assistance from this level to make sure it solidifies well into 3D is to control our focus and our emotions, which I say again is why they are so desperate to have us fearful and watching chaos. They want us to think the world is helpless, that we're helpless, and that there's nothing we can do, and it's pure chaos. And, of course, we have the 3-ring circus on the political level, which is supposed to distract us into negativity. But they know that if they control our focus is what collapses the quantum field into reality. So the hard thing is turning away from watching what seems to be a train wreck.
Right, and train wrecks can be fascinating, It's just
exactly.
Sort of hypnotic to watch it unfold. And fine, okay. I mean, we can't quite ignore the train wreck, but we can still rise above it and keep our consciousness focused upward. And as you say, with this delicate line where, we're realizing that on one level, etherically, the battle's been won, but we cannot afford to, be complacent for 1 second because
Right.
Because they are so good at pouring the negativity on us, pouring the train wreck on us, making it as hypnotic as possible, that we can still get pulled down into that dark faction timeline. So that's why, here at Radio 5G, and Nancy certainly does this with all of her Cosmic Reality family and Cosmic Reality Radio. It's real, it's hard-hitting, and it's focused on hope. It's focused on all of the really encouraging things that are happening in the world. And of course, the amazing reality of Shungite as a gift of Gaia is a big part of that. What I'd like to do at this point is follow up on Nancy's suggestion. She brought forward this Swiss magazine article published in L'Illustré on Thursday the 18th of this month. That's a French language weekly consumer magazine published in Lausanne, Switzerland. Its readership 338,000. So if you'd like, Nancy, if you're good with this, shall I just go ahead and read some of this, and then we can sort of, interrupt and comment as we go?
Yes, and Falcon, please feel very comfortable stopping and asking questions or making statements as he reads. And I've already posted it in chat.
Okay, here we go. So this article from L'Illustré, entitled "Swiss Magazine Reports First 5G Injuries in Geneva," by a gentleman named Mark David. Since 5G antennas were installed near their home in the heart of Geneva, these residents of the same area suffer from various health problems. Are they victims of a technology whose dangers were not sufficiently tested? A doctor and a member of parliament speak out. Gathered in the apartment of one of the two on the 5th floor of a building in the center of Geneva, these residents of the same area, looking at each other, what they have in common is insomnia, tinnitus, headaches, and a lot of unanswered questions. The youngest, Johan Perichod, 29 years old, has lived there for 11 years, and he is not the type to cultivate any sort of hatred of invasive technology. He's a healthy young man, active and positive, who's just returned from 4 years in New York and makes finely crafted videos and films for the media or for individuals, often working in his room with his computer. For him and his neighbor, it all started in April. He says, "I've never had a problem with Wi-Fi or any of that. Never had any problem sleeping. And then suddenly, I had trouble falling asleep. In particular, at home, I felt, how can I put it, like I was in a microwave. I didn't feel good in the house, as if I was surrounded by ghosts." When he looked on Facebook and on the website of the Swiss Confederation, he saw that 3 5G antennas had just been put into service nearby, and that other people were complaining of identical problems, headaches, tiredness. Was it psychological? Asks Johan. I don't know, but for the first time, although I have never had earaches while composing my music, my ears started whistling. That's tinnitus. It woke me up at night. All of this was unusual. He was assailed by the unpleasant sensation of being used, caught up in something not of his own making. So he called Swisscom. That would be the Swiss telecom company. Scarcely 10 minutes after he had filled out the basic form, a representative called him back, sounding all empathetic. He was immediately on the defensive. He explained to me tests had taken place. Everything was fine. At the end, for form's sake, he wished me a good recovery. Today, Johan is a little better, although his sinuses have been blocked for the last 2 months, an infection he's never experienced before. Elidan Arzoni, 50 years old, on the Rue de Coutances in Geneva, says, when they installed 5G, I felt bad from one day to the next. The solution, move home? His neighbor, Elidan Arzoni, is not doing any better. On the same age, the actor, stage director, and director of the Metamorphosis Company started having the same symptoms, but more acutely. It happened overnight, he says. My ears started to make very loud sounds, whereas at the time I didn't even know what tinnitus was. At the same time, he felt pains on the left side and at the back of his skull, and such violent discomfort in his heart that he thought he was having a heart attack and went to the hospital emergency room 2 days later. There, after a few tests, he was reassured to be told that he had a, quote, sportsman's heart. When he raised the issue of the presence of the antennas, the nurse replied that nobody was trained to provide information on the potential effects of those transmitters. The only advice I was given was to move. To him, there was no doubt the arrival of the antennas was the cause of his illness. It is a no-brainer. Even Swisscom confirmed it in terms of the timing. And I'm in very good health. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I never go to the doctor. He states that his wife and children, age 9, 16, and 21, are also newly suffering from insomnia. More vocal than Johann, the actor does not hide his concern. He wrote to the president of the State Council, Antonio Hausers, of the Greens Party, and simply got told that everything was legal with this new technology. Dissatisfied, he does not hide his feelings. How can we forget that the Swiss Confederation is the majority shareholder of Swiss Telecom? As soon as you come up against the financial interests of these people, they go into total denial. Nobody is interested in the citizens. Even the forthcoming report, which is scheduled for the summer of 2019 and produced by a working group in collaboration with the Federal Office for Communication, was just postponed to the end of the year. Even this forthcoming report will not address the aspect of health. If cases of leukemia or brain cancer start mounting up, it will take years for them to be confirmed. Now, it's out of the question to live under an antenna. Since then, he has coped with the earaches. It's unlivable. It's very strong. On Facebook, where he talks openly about his situation, he has to deal with attacks and accept being treated as backward. That said, there is no question of his moving home. Why should I leave my home? When I'm a citizen of Geneva and I pay my taxes here, that would be totally undemocratic. And where would I go? Anyway, given that there will soon be antennas everywhere. Right now, I feel like an undesirable. I don't know where to flee. My work and my children are here. Equally disturbing, when he goes to neighboring France, his pains subside. They come back as soon as he returns to Geneva. Installed rapidly in Switzerland, 5G antennas are raising the issue of the health consequences of electrosmog. As for Johann, he says he's gradually getting used to it. However, he has promised himself that if he had children, it would be out of the question for his family to live near an antenna. In my view, what's happening will have an impact on our generation when we're older. Worse, if he understands the progress that 5G can bring in some specific areas, such as medical or research fields, he thinks that for people, it's virtually useless. So, two neighbors' parting comments are on the same wavelength. We feel like guinea pigs. Is anyone going to pay attention? Now, we've shared this link. This is from emfacts.com, where they're sharing the Swiss Magazine article on the first 5G injuries in Switzerland. Unless we want to take a little break for some feedback, I'll keep reading. Are we good to keep reading for a while?
Well, I would like to comment briefly.
Sure, go ahead.
I heard an interview with Dr. Pell and another doctor, and he was talking about the next generation. They were saying that based on studies with rats, which of course are very genetically similar to humans and typically used for that reason in testing for all kinds of scientific purposes, based on what they saw in rats exposed to these levels of radiation, that anyone exposed to it, which would be, of course, all the developed countries, would be sterile within 5 to 10 years. So this is it is incredibly damaging.
Right, and for those who are familiar with the depopulation agenda, and it's really explicit, the evidence for a depopulation agenda on the part of the corrupt elite is so over the top. They're really unabashed about it. That if you think that the 5G rollout just happens to have as an accidental consequence the sterilization of humanity, might be well to think again about that one. Okay, just rolling ahead here. Did you want to say something?
Yes, I had one more thought. He was talking about being influenced, one of the people you were reading about. There is, I believe, a very definite influence. A lot of healers, energetic healers, have noticed that they do seem to be using the frequencies to evoke certain emotional states in the population, because it will hit an entire area at the same time. It might be a frequency of, and this was not even with 5G implemented yet. It seems that, according to what I've read, they're using the Dopplers. Dopplers can project and not just receive. And so they are using wavelengths to control emotional states of populations. Populations don't rise up if they're feeling depressed, if they're feeling anxious, if they're feeling sick, or shamed or guilty. And all of these are frequencies that can be induced in the brain. And it sounds extremely This is one of the facts that's, I think, going to come to light very soon, because a lot of us have already established. I can feel a wave come through, and I'll call a friend of mine on the south end of town, a medicine woman, and I will say, okay, I got thus and so at 10 o'clock out of the blue, and she'll say, yep, me too. And she said it was coming from west to east or north to south. And I'll say, yep. And so it does seem to be very creepy, but true. It is a manipulation of frequency, which is a manipulation of consciousness.
Yeah, and maybe, Nancy, maybe you can comment on that from your military background. I don't know if they were already using this kind of technology for, emotional control, but do you have some insight on that?
Not specifically, because remember, I was in it in the 70s. I didn't come across anybody that knew it, but the people behind everything definitely understood it. It was the whole concept of controlling populations. I mean, they tried it with chemistry, fluoride. Fluoride was put into the water that was given to prisoners in concentration camps in Nazi Germany because it made them so docile. So, in 10 years, we've got water that's now being treated by fluoride. And that's just the first attempt at control, was the putting the water, going against the water, as they built this system for ultimate control. Another thing that they can do is they can send out a frequency that actually makes people sick. Like all of a sudden flu erupts in a particular location. This is all testing. They've been testing this for at least 30, 40 years. So yeah, it's.
And let's not forget the viral aspect either. There's a video making the rounds of a leaked presentation to the Pentagon officials, and scientists had developed a virus which could be introduced, he said, through the rhinoviruses, which of course is colds and flu, which spread very rapidly. And it was to reduce, quote, the religiosity of people. And he showed on the brain scans that it would reduce spiritual thoughts and feelings. And the interesting thing was, he said it would also reduce people having desires and intent. So it is basically the idea that they would create a more docile farm animal who would, of course, be a good wage slave. And this is you making the rounds. I'm sure that anyone can locate it easily.
Yeah, I've seen that several years ago, Falcon. That is, and it, just for people who haven't seen it out there, it is a very boring video. And that is because you're sitting in a small conference room with a bunch of whatever faction of CIA it is that is being indoctrinated or shown, that is in whatever program in which they can just share and discuss this sort of thing as a matter of fact, of eliminating spirituality, of eliminating free will and intent by the introduction of a viral agent into a population. So you've got a bunch of really, zoned out automatons listening to another zoned out automaton delivering a lecture in which he's pretty much just saying, well, we have learned that if we introduce this viral agent, that it does tend to reduce the religiosity, just as if, this is just, matter of fact, daily business there in that particular section of CIA. Now, there's all kinds of different factions in all the agencies, branches of military. Team Dark has their factions. The Inner Light Network, we have our factions in there as well. So just not to give the idea that we're doing an outright condemnation of the patriots who are in there, who are in the Pentagon, fighting on the side of the actual freedom, the restoration of the republic, folks like that. But there's just no denying the documentation that CIA and other corrupt factions of the intelligence community have been rolling this stuff out for a long time. And also in the UK, in Bristol, upon the implementation of 5G, they had a huge rise in teen suicides. So, there is definitely a psychological and emotional component to this. When you start to feel, depressed and sleepless and, all these other symptoms, there's the emotional psychological component as well, which is deliberate. This is not accidental. Okay, I'm going to go back to yeah, go ahead.
Yes, it's just all an effort to destabilize people. And I think that's why finding our center is so important. You have to maintain that as much as possible. Get out in nature. Don't stay on the computer all the time. Go out, find that meditation spot by that wonderful tree that will help you to cleanse your fields of this crap. Put your feet in water for 3 minutes at a time so that the fields, that excess EMF runs off of you, so that you can maintain that divine neutrality, that energy even of love and gratitude, which makes you so powerful.
Exactly.
I've got to jump in here, okay? Because what you just described is what Shungite is doing worldwide for all thousands, maybe millions at this point, of people. Because Shungite, and I'm not going to get into a long discussion of it, but Shungite is a very unique, it was a meteorite strike 2.5 billion years ago that's just been sitting there waiting for human beings to wake up to it. And what it does is it allows us to level the playing field. When you have like a Shungite pendant on, when you're getting hit with all this stuff, without it, you're getting hit with all this stuff, and two things are happening. First, the signal itself is coming in a rotation that is opposite your own cells, the way your cells are rotating. And because of that, you start to deteriorate in your brain. Every time you put a phone even, an inch away from your head, your brain starts to get heated up, which causes inflammation, which causes all sorts of dumbing down, cloudiness in your brain. That is because of the way that the frequency of the electromagnetic, in this case Wi-Fi especially, is rotating. When that field hits the Shungite field, it immediately reverses its rotation because the Shungite itself is connected directly to the quantum field. So it's an extremely powerful molecule that it's a C60 that seems to be the powerhouse behind it. And this molecule is a larger molecule than most, but it's in the shape of a soccer ball, the perfect geometry, sacred geometry on top of sacred geometry that opens up the quantum field so that this molecule is rotating at 20 billion times a second. It's amazing in its power. So it can reverse these signals. But you're still getting hit with a lot of unnatural signal that is throwing your bioelectromagnetic body out of whack itself. And we're not talking 5G, we're talking 4G. So when that happens, Shungite also works to stabilize and to put back into balance the bioelectromagnetic field. So everybody should have Shungite as a personal protection.
Nancy, I have to jump in here because I know that since you sell Shungite, people might think, oh, well, she's just selling a product. But I do not sell Shungite, and I'd like to verify it is amazing, amazing stuff. I think truly when Edgar Cayce said the salvation of the world will come out of Russia, that he was talking about Shungite. Because when I put black Shungite, I put 3 pieces, the regular black Shungite, in water and just leave it for a few hours. It, over time, the water becomes so blessed. I don't know how to use the word, but blessed. It changes the frequency of it. and I can drink it, and it starts to clear the radiation out of my field. It's amazing, and the water tastes better. It tastes sweet and soft. The fullerenes, they truly do, as you say, have a powerful energetic effect by putting the correct spin on the atoms around it. And of course, as we know, water carries energy. It carries imprints of energetics, and it becomes very healing, that water. So I do encourage anybody listening to go try it. Get some plain black shungite, get 3 pieces, put it in your water, and watch what happens. Watch the change in the taste.
And the reason that I wanted to bring this up was in relationship to what you were talking about going out into nature, because we've proven that we can change the entire reality of a beehive, like a honeybee. We can take away all the things that kill them. In 3 years' time, raising over 3 million bees, we have never lost a bee to disease, to mites or any other pest, nor to colony collapse. Not a one of them. It's astounding information that proves to us that, yes, the shungite is that powerful. And what happened is that because we're in the 6th extinction event where the insect world is collapsing, many people on their own started taking shungite and going out into nature and just leaving it all over the place. And we actually, and you've probably seen it, it's a map of the shungite world grid. And people say, I just did this place, and they put it on this map. Well, you can't even hardly see the map in a lot of places in the world because there's so many people that have posted over them. But we don't even know how many people are maybe doing it that aren't reporting. Probably you only got 10% on that map, and it's way over 100,000. So, you got this movement worldwide, and you don't have to get the shungite from us. There's shungite you can get, from many sources, but you don't need much of it. It's like the smaller you get with a shungite, the more energetic it becomes. So you can take small pieces of shungite. Now, I'll say one other thing, because this becomes something that they ask us a lot. When you go out into nature to do this, use 3 nuggets at a time. Take 3 nuggets and put them wherever you're going to put them. Now, the reason for that is that it makes a stronger, cohesive or coherent field. And if you go into an area, and you'll feel it. You'll feel how far you can get from the first pile you put. Put a second pile, and then put a third pile. Because this is a science beyond being metaphysical. It's really a science that they don't want us to know. And that's why, it's called enerology. It's a study of energy. And the amazing results that we're getting all over the world using just spreading shungite. And the weird and beautiful part of shungite is that, just as they were alluding to, the etheric aspect of it. It has an energy field that is now encompassing the world. So even if you do not have any shungite physically with you, go out into nature and bless the where you're at, and ask that the shungite field itself, the energy surrounding the planet, bless this place. And I'm telling you, you're going to have shungite going, all this etheric shungite all over the place. It takes your human mind, your human thought, to create an environment to use your own powers. And that is called imagination. If you can imagine it, you can create it.
That's absolutely true. I've seen it over and over in doing energetic work and doing healing work for the earth and for people and animals. It is quite astonishing how much power we have. And the reason that they have taught us to denigrate, look down on imagination and say, oh, it's just imagination, it's just daydreaming, is to give us the impression that that does not create reality. But the truth is, reality, energy, follows thought. All reality is made of energy. We direct the energy via our focus and our imagination, and things shift, and they shift in the physical. It is astonishing what can be done with simply using imagination. Do not ever imagine that your imagination has no power. It is extremely powerful.
Yes, and of course, Team Dark, as you call them, Falcon, they know this very well. And this is scientifically documented. Why did the Soviet Union, starting decades ago, have whole programs in their intelligence community doing remote viewing, doing psychokinetic work, to say nothing of the evidence, of course, that CIA was doing the same thing, while the propaganda is out there dismissing it as "quote unquote" just imagination. So yeah, this may sound all very airy-fairy, but the fact is that it's hard science. And when we talk about shungite, it's about its documented relationship to the quantum field. There is this strange phenomenon where if you're filtering water, most systems that filter water, at some point, the filtering system has to be cleaned, right? So they knew that shungite purifies water in this amazing way. So they're saying, oh, okay, the toxins in the water have gone away since we put shungite in it. Well, we must have to take the shungite out of the water once in a while, put it in the sun or clean it because it must be absorbing all these toxins. Well, no, it is actually returning these toxins to the quantum field. They are literally disintegrating at the molecular level because of what Nancy just described, the absolutely off the charts stability and spin in a bioenhancing way of the fullerene molecule. It simply disintegrates any toxins and returns it to source, for lack of a better word. So yes. It's simultaneously cosmic, beyond belief cosmic, and hard science at the same time.
Well, it's sacred geometry. We're really just beginning to recover our knowledge, the ancient knowledge of the power of sacred geometry. There are light workers now that are shifting timelines for us using Metatron's cube, which is another sacred geometry. We're being taught how to do that. And it's important work. We do get to choose our timeline as free will beings on this planet, and sacred geometry can be an important part of that. But I think we should mention, though, that the shungite will not stop 5G. Do we know why that is?
Yes, it's a totally different thing. Okay. There are people that go out there and they say, shungite's going to save you from 5G, or the C60 is going to save you from 5G, or put some colored yellow on your whatever and you're going to be safe. Look, okay, so you save yourself from 5G. You save your family. And nothing is left except death and destruction around you. What is the point? If you can't get shungite to the microorganisms in the soil, then kiss it goodbye anyway. So don't look for 5G to be fixed by shungite. Because even if I had the fix, I would tell you, no, it's not the problem. The problem is we are in the throes, near the end of the sixth extinction event, and that was with 4G. I have been fighting this for 40 years. To me, 5G is a godsend because it's happening just at the time where if it was another 2 years, we could not turn it around. We can turn it around at the 4G level. Just do not let 5G be turned on. And if it is turned on in your neighborhood, it's a system. Find out where the plug is and pull it.
Right. And just as the usual precautionary note, we are not advocating any militant action. We are simply describing what the options are, and that we as citizens, sovereign citizens with our constitutional rights, do not have to tolerate the imposition of a lethal technology in our neighborhoods, on the street lamps, affecting our children. We have the right to say no. And so that's what we're encouraging everybody to do. You can go to 5G-know.com, 5G-no.com. That's our website for Radio 5G. We share many links to other effective organizations such as TakeBackYourPower.net, and ehtrust.org are a couple of the really effective organizations out there organizing political action. So, yeah.
In my own defense, because I did. What I'm talking about is pull the plug in your head. Okay? Because, again, imagination, visualizing it, just think of the plug not being put in there. And then go out and do the things that Falcon is doing with the people there in Taos. You go out and you make the people who are in charge of everything, you don't say no to them, N-O, you say K-N-O-W. Know the facts. Because no sane person, once they understand the facts, but they're being brainwashed into thinking people like ourselves are crazy people. And because they have so many reasons not to want to listen to us. Well, please listen to us. And if you have to get down on your knees and pray to any God that you've got, do it, because what we need to do is change the collective consciousness of humanity. And that's why we do these radio shows, not because of the people listening, but because our own thoughts are programming a new reality where everybody wakes up and says, exactly. Whoa, what's this about? But don't just sit there in fear. You can think yourself out of it.
I'd like to mention, too.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yes, there's a particularly powerful day. The more people you get together, even if you have 2 or 3, and the more the better, the effect when you get people together is synergistic. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 might equal 5, energetically speaking. And so it's exponential. And there's a day coming up that is particularly powerful, and that's the 26th. It's just around the corner. And on that day, we're hitting the end of a 13,000-year cycle. And on that day, a new energy comes in. It's a giant wave of the divine feminine. And, of course, when we think of femininity, what we've been trained to believe is it's about being sweet and docile and supportive and demure. But, of course, we know better if we've ever seen women that are angry. Divine feminine energy can be mama bear energy, and you do not mess with mama bear. In defense of the earth and in defense of the children and the animals, you do not want to get in the way of an angry woman when she has reached her limit. And if this energy comes in as it's supposed to, we will see changes we've not seen since the Atlantean period. We will see a giant wave of it's something we haven't seen in 13,000 years. And it's to balance out the masculine, because the patriarchy and the exploitation of the earth is ending. It's coming. We're going to have to bring it into balance, or it all caves in, as it has been. We're watching it, as you said, the 6th extinction. And more people, of course, are awakening. So on the 26th, if you can even get 1 or 2 other people to sit down with you and visualize together and command, request, as has been shown, the most effective form of prayer is not so much begging as commanding in the name of love and light, because that's where your power comes from. When you're in alignment with the source of all things, the source of all love and light, you're in alignment with that and you command, that's when things happen. If you look at how Jesus did things, he didn't say, oh, please help these people. He went in and he said, be healed. And it was a command energy. So get your people together if you can, listeners. And on that day, it's going to be a powerful day. And it's also the start of the new Mayan year, according to the Tzolk'in calendar. And it's the year of the white magnetic wizard, which means it's going to be about purity and purifying things, white innocence. It's going to be magnetic, meaning it's about attraction. Your powers of attraction will be amped up magnificently. And wizard, of course, is your alchemy. It's your ability to change reality. We are master alchemizers. So we can transmute all kinds of things, and especially in groups. So wherever 2 or more are gathered, start sending that energy. And the 26th will be a powerful shift day for several reasons then. Not to mention that it's the beginning of the Lion's Gate period, the height of the Lion's Gate, which is where a bunch of energies come in from Sirius. Higher consciousness flows in. That energy will flow in. And, of course, the Egyptians knew this. That's why they oriented their pyramids at Giza towards Sirius. that energy will be available to us. So it will amp up your power even more. So remember, you're about to turn the corner and become a white magnetic wizard, whoever you are. And I just encourage anybody listening to take belief in yourself, the belief that Team Dark has tried to convince you that you don't have all this power, and use those imaginative abilities. And of course, then you have to go out into the world and anchor it in, try to wake people up. But there's also tremendous power if you work at it from the metaphysical angle.
Let me just jump in here for an enterology fact. We've determined that everybody has an electromagnetic frequency that is unique to that person. However, there are other people who are very, very, very similar in frequency to you. If you change your frequency and you start resonating at a higher, more potent resonance, of the energy, 40,000 people will begin to resonate higher because they are so similar to your frequency. It's based on the concept of resonance. Of string, a sound starts resonating, and others that are very similar to it will respond to that vibration. So for every person that sits there on the 26th, even if you're by yourself, and you think about a new reality that I call the reality of the golden rule, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Think of a pristine nature. If you do that, and you actually will get into the energy frequency and raise it, 40,000 other people doing nothing will respond. That's how
it's so true.
Which begins to anchor it into our reality. Absolutely. That affects our timeline. That's the timeline we go down. Wherever
exactly.
the energy is taking us.
And we're coming up on our break here in a couple of minutes, and just staying in the flow of what you were both describing, of the power of focused, thoughtful, prayerful energy, and not in a petitionary, begging way, but as you say, in a divinely commanding way. As a divine child of the Heavenly Father, Mother, friend, the source of all. That is the frequency from which manifestation happens, from that knowing and owning of your right. And when we think back to, those of us who were around for the harmonic convergence back in 1987 in August, that was also Jose Arguelles' research at the time based on the Mayan calendar and a wave of energy hitting the earth. And he asked if we could only get 500,000, I think was the number they were shooting for, around the planet to meditate on that day as this wave of energy hits the earth. Wonderful changes could be possible. And that was before the internet, right? So this was just going out over radio, TV, and newsletters, and it created, quite a wave. Well, when you look back on the harmonic convergence, people say, yeah, well, it came and went, big deal, what happened? Well, I like to say, if you had Jose Arguelles go on TV the week before the harmonic convergence, and if he had said, okay, here we are in August of 1987, I predict that if we can get 500,000 people to meditate on this special day as these energies come in, I will predict right here and now that within 5 years, the Soviet Union will peacefully dissolve. The Iron Curtain will cease to exist. Germany will be reunited. Václav Havel will be released from prison and become the president of a free Czechoslovakia. Nelson Mandela will be released from prison and become the president of an apartheid-free South Africa. Lech Wałęsa will be released from prison and become president of a free Poland. The Soviet Union will dissolve. The Cold War will end. All of this will happen within 5 years if we'll just meditate together on August 17th, 1987. And of course, all that happened. That all those things were completely unthinkable. Any geopolitical expert would have laughed you out of the room. They all happened within 5 years of the harmonic convergence. So if we, listen up here to what Falcon is sharing with us, I mean, I don't know the science behind it, but I trust her knowledge. She's a very intelligent woman. That the day after tomorrow, the 26th, is a powerful day in which to welcome in these energies. So with that, it's 11:01 a.m. We're going to take a little break here. Okay, we are back. Welcome back to Radio 5G. This is Michael Henry Dunn with my co-host Nancy Hopkins and our good friend Falcon Britt as our special guest today. So we are sharing I love what we're covering here today. It's just a beautiful spectrum. We could stay on the same flow that we were on just before our break. We do have a couple of paragraphs left of this very informative article from a Swiss magazine that just recently came out on the documented injuries resulting in Geneva, specifically in the wake of the rollout of 5G. How's that sound to you, Nancy? Do you want to stay on the flow you were at, or
no? Because we'll probably get right back into it. Falcon, are you okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. So again,
good.
this is all right. So again, this is an article from the Swiss magazine L'Illustré, which was published on Thursday, the 18th of this month, and documenting some very serious health consequences that began to happen immediately upon the rollout of 5G in Geneva, Switzerland. So then we have a doctor says that we are in danger of a catastrophe. He's a medical practitioner and PDC member. I'm not quite sure what that refers to in Switzerland. Bertrand Buchs. He filed a motion for a moratorium on 5G in Geneva, and he sounds the alarm. What is the reaction to this testimony from citizens? So this is Dr. Buchs in Switzerland. Says, I'm seeing more and more of this. In the absence of clear studies, we have no right to tell these people that they are imagining their illness. And with the shorter waves of 5G, nobody knows what can happen, especially when you consider their potentiation. In other words, their mixture with 3G, 4G, and Wi-Fi. And that's something that we're always reminding folks of here at Radio 5G, is that this is a matter of densification. 5G coming in doesn't mean 3G and 4G and all the other EMF is going away. It's a layer upon layer. So the Swiss doctor continues asking, why did you file the motion? He said, because they are treating us like idiots. Where this is concerned, our authorities are going against common sense. The precautionary principle is clearly violated. And just to clarify, the precautionary principle is simply that you don't go ahead with implementing something about which there are possible health concerns without doing independent studies in advance in order to ensure that they're safe. So it says the precautionary principle is clearly violated. Why do so many antennas appear in just 2 months? Editor's note here, 100 in Switzerland today, 90% coverage of the territory by the end of the year. Whereas for any given drug, it takes years to evaluate whether it's good or bad. And remember, this is a doctor talking. He said everything is going too fast. We are in the midst of a race to the first operator to have 5G installed, which is happening in such haste, although there is no objective urgency to install 5G. For the population, it's virtually useless. They could have done as Germany did, where 5G is restricted to certain businesses and is heavily monitored. So what is at stake? It said, as nothing is seen or felt, the public believes there is zero risk, a bit like in the nuclear field, right? Well, you can't see radiation. It just kills you before you know it. However, there is a risk of experiencing a catastrophe in a few years in terms of tumors, for example, and the state will be liable. So they ask him, what do you recommend? Again, this is a doctor talking. I repeat, after having tried to inform myself in the databases that I have access to as a doctor, no serious study exists yet, which is not surprising when you know that this technology was developed in China, then in the United States. And just a little side note about a perspective coming from Europe. So here's this Swiss doctor just talking sort of matter-of-factly about the fact that there's no serious study that exists about 5G's health effects. And not surprising when you know this technology was developed in China. Well, here in the freedom-loving U.S., we like to think, ooh, China, yes, the communists, authoritarian government, and they're all dumbed down, and they're all controlled, and the media is all propaganda. And yes, of course, those poor people in China under this authoritarian regime, well, they're not going to have any serious health study about 5G. But to the Swiss doctor, he then just goes right on to name the U.S. That's not surprising when you consider this technology was developed in China and then in the United States. So no surprise that there's no serious study, because the rest of the world can see that our democracy, our beloved precious democracy for which our ancestors died, is so badly compromised that a Princeton University study states baldly that we're a plutocracy governed by the wealthy. It's not surprising that big telecom, backed by the FCC, backed by the puppeteers above the FCC, have seen to it that there's no serious study of the health effects of 5G. Okay, that was just my bit. Now going on with what the doctor said. In Switzerland, we could open up a line for people who feel ill. We could listen to these complaints and examine them. Our country has the means and the skills. The debate must be launched because this story is far from over. But here we just get, move along, nothing to see, nothing to see. Okay, again, so that is the excellent article from L'Illustré, the Swiss magazine reporting the first 5G injuries in Geneva. So with that, let's get back into the flow of our conversation with my co-host Nancy Hopkins and our very valued guest, Falcon Britt. Any comments on this as we're rolling along?
Falcon.
One thing that I noticed in that is it does seem to be a very hurried implementation. I do think that Nancy's right. They feel so pressured because we're waking up, and you can't put people back to sleep. Once they know things, they can't unknow them. And so they're trying desperately to get this control mechanism in place, and so that they've tipped their hand. People are seeing very clearly the damage it causes, and it is rapid. The symptoms are rapid and immediate, as has been just read about. So people are going to wake up. The question to me is, how many people will be harmed, and how many children will have to have brain cancer before people truly get off the sofas and demand, because it will take that at this point. We have been too complacent, too comfortable with comfort, and it's a matter of just taking back our country, which will take all of us. But I do believe that one of the things that is shifting, particularly at this time, is that the changes in our own frequency, our mental, emotional frequency, and what we give attention to, changes karma. It's a matter of law of attraction. So some people say, oh, there's nothing you can do about what happens to you in life because it's karma and it's all fated. But what they don't understand is it is your energetic field, the imprints in your energetic field, that are causing the karma. It's attracting the things that you are afraid of. It's attracting the things that you worry about because you're projecting it into reality. Now, that can happen subconsciously and largely so. So part of what's important at this time is to do your shadow work. And it's a time, because Pluto is square with Saturn, that people's issues, their childhood issues, are just welling up in them. I spoke with a friend who came back from Alaska on an airplane flight, and she saw, it was the night of the lunar eclipse. She said adults all over the plane were throwing temper tantrums. And I noticed also a number of people were having our own little pity parties. Oh, poor me. And it's all childhood. If you examine it, where does it go back to? It can go back to your childhood. It can even go back to previous lives, which most people are not aware of on a conscious level, but the imprints are there. So cleaning your energetic field, clearing this stuff out, letting go of your stories, doing the forgiveness work, examining honestly what you want to let go of, the thoughts and beliefs and feelings and energetic patterns, behavioral patterns that don't serve you anymore, and letting that go, getting out of relationships if you're still hanging on with that narcissist because you think they're going to change. All of that just is not serving you, quite honestly. And if the more you let go of those negative imprints and clear that negativity out of your field, the stronger and healthier you will be, because it frees up your energy. Then you have energy to move forward with your life and change the world and feel happy and good and be healthy. So an important part of this that most people don't want to think about is to do your shadow work. And we need to do both. We need to be visualizing the wonderful. But to float around in airy fairyland and say to yourself, oh, I'm just going to be love and light. I'm just going to be love and light, la, 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 and put your fingers in your ears and pretend none of this is happening. That's a very disempowering approach. You can't just disengage from the world and say, la, 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 it's not in my reality. So I think it's important to maintain that balance. Do your own inner work and look at the outer, but take good care of yourself so that you are, in nature, as I said, to keep your field clear, have your shungite pendants, work with the shungite in your water. So it involves a lot of things. We're being asked to step into our mastery. I think that's the best way to put it. And supposedly most of the people who are here now went through numerous interviews before being allowed to incarnate. You all that are listening, you are the best of the best. The people that are allowed to come in at the shift of a planet, when the consciousness of an entire planet is to be shifted, tend to be experts. You're either expert grid workers, or you're expert at shifting timelines, you're experts at shifting energies, realities, emotions. Some of you are transmuting emotions for other people. So you have tremendous abilities that are just now waking up. So don't be freaked out if some new abilities come online. Suddenly, for instance, your third eye opens. There's activation dates, more incoming light codes on August the 1st and the 3rd. Your higher self will be checking in and sending you messages. So if you're not really that clued in as to who your higher self is, it's the bridge between you and your soul, and you want to invite that in because it has your inside plan, who you really are, what you're really here to do, what your particular energy signature is helpful for. And some of us are generalists, meaning we can do a lot of different things, so we kind of fill in around the edges. But please, people, believe in your power. You do have it. You have abilities that are just beginning to wake up. And please meditate so that you can maintain that emotional stability. Do so in nature. Trees are amazing beings. They will help you shift it if you can find even one tree to work with. And there are pictures online of how you can do this. You can set up a torus field, a toroidal field, where you're exchanging energy with the tree. Trees are natural washing machines. And, of course, you want to work with your shungite.
Well, I am so glad to hear all this, Falcon. This is so valuable. I'm kind of amazed, really, at all the different elements and wisdom that you bring to the field here. This is thinking you ought to have your own radio show. Seriously, I'm not kidding. And, the vibrational thing that you bring up, particularly in this sensitive time, is to say there are these really intense energies astrologically going on. We're in a Mercury retrograde, and we're in a really gnarly Mercury retrograde because of, I'm not an astrologer, I can't quote it, but you've got Leo and Taurus lining up against each other with Mars, and it's gnarly. Let's just say it's, like you say, there are these people on a plane flight, all these adults throwing temper tantrums. And, I catch it in myself, where.
Yes, I had a big pity party the same day that the people were having temper tantrums. And it's hilarious when you've done so much work on yourself and you find yourself sitting there and your inner child starts in with something and you're like, where did that come from? Well, I didn't even invite it. But sometimes the energetics of the stars shift things in us, and it's all for release. It's all good. You just can't buy into the story, because if you buy into the story, you can get stuck there.
Exactly. And to be able to recognize it, take a breath, pull back. Don't say the next clever, smart thing you were going to say to a friend or loved one. Don't say the reactionary thing. Just breathe, step back, Say, hey, sweetheart, I need to go for a walk. And don't let that energy take over, that volatile energy, which, words are like bullets. You say the wrong thing and it goes out there, and unfortunately it can get remembered for a long time. Yep. So this period is up, I think, on July 31st, if I recall rightly. Is that right, Falcon, with the Mercury retrograde? It goes direct on the 31st?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure about that. I mean, there's always the lingering shadow of it for a few days. And speaking of shadow work, that is something at SAGE, the Sacred Academy of Global Evolution, formerly Sacred Academy of Geoenergetics, and I'd like to explore that with you too a little bit later about the grid work. We look at this a lot. We have already begun to have impact with a training program for sacred activists. And that's really all we're talking about here. Getting in touch with source, making a difference, not just going, oh, la, 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 everything's lovely, but being willing to stand up for righteousness, for dharma, as the Vedas call it, that we have to do our shadow work. And that is about bringing the kind of repressed aspects of our personalities into the light and working with them, and not, pretending that we're all just good, holy, pure, light worker angels. We've got to work with these energies. It doesn't mean that you act out, that it's like, okay, I'm ticked off and and somebody's going to pay for it. I'm going to let my anger out here. No, you acknowledge it, you work with it, you kind of dance down the hall with it, but you don't pretend that you're nothing but, angelic light, because we're not. We are fallible human beings going through a growth process. And when we do that, we're able to look at other people with compassion and not demonize people like it's, oh, we're the do-gooders and there's the evildoers whom we must either, convert or exterminate.
Yes.
That's right down the road to Nazi Germany right there.
Exactly. The holier than thou. Be very careful, because it's easy for us to fall into that as light workers. And even the old game of the Savior is coming. I mean, it's not that light's not coming onto the planet, and it is, I believe, a Christ consciousness that is coming in gradually. But to believe, for instance, that Q is going to save us, it just plays into the whole paradigm of, I'm just going to sit here and somebody will come rescue me. And we do have to let go of that. We're the ones that are supposed to anchor in the light ourselves. We're the ones that have to take the initiative. And the higher levels can help us, but it's only when we begin to take action. That's a kind of cosmic law. I'd like to add one more thing, if I could.
Sure.
There's a technique for clearing emotion that works incredibly well, and because a lot of hard emotions are coming up, some people are even suicidal that I'm talking to. It's a sound technique. And what you do is you allow the emotion to come up, you feel it, you give it a little respect, you don't just try to squash it back down, because as healers say, you have to feel it to heal it. So you let the emotion come up, but you emit it as a sound. But the interesting thing is, the second step is the most important. You want to release the emotion as a sound, and it doesn't matter whether it's a moan or crying or screaming or whatever. You could sing a song that resonates with that energy. You get that energy out, but the important step is to reset your field, to reset your emotional field by giving a new sound that establishes peace and order again. And for you, that might be a mantra. It might be a certain tone that you use. It might be a song, a happy song. The reason the primal scream therapy did not work particularly well was they didn't know that second step. But it was received by Peggy Black, who is a sound healer in Washington State, and it works exceptionally well. So if you can go into the car, if you do it at work, of course, they'll think you're insane. But if you can step out somewhere or at the end of the day and just emit it as a sound, put in a replacement sound, it clears incredibly fast. I was astonished how well it would work. I was a little skeptical, to be honest. So it's definitely something to try out.
Well, I'm glad you shared that. I had never heard of that particular technique. I mean, as someone who has led chanting for meditations for many years, what's called kirtan in India, I'm very familiar with the healing power of sound, of chanting, of particularly of names of the divine. But to identify that feeling, whatever it might be, that disturbance or anger or grief or pity, and to bring it forward, see it, and give a sound expression to it, and then to replace it with whatever holistic, peaceful, joyful, restorative, healing sound works for you. That's a beautiful approach. I really am glad you shared that. And the other piece that
I was just amazed
Go
how
ahead.
fast. I was amazed at how fast it would clear things. I found that I could be incredibly upset, and yet when I used the technique, within 10 or 15 minutes, and I mean deeply upset. It's the kind of upset where you could be upset for days if you got stuck in it, because it was deep and you were doubting, and it was a belief issue as well as an emotional thing coming up, powerful emotions. And yet you could clear it in 15 minutes and feel like going to a party. That's how, I'm not kidding. That's how dramatic you could shift. I know that in Law of Attraction materials, Abraham Hicks, they said, you have to take it in steps. If you use the sound thing, the steps go incredibly fast. It clears. So give it a shot.
Wow, I sure will. The other thing you were saying that I wanted to just respond to was in terms of waiting for some savior to come in, whether it's, Q or whomever, whatever your political spectrum is, whoever you think your, savior du jour, savior of the day is, it's up to us. And it doesn't mean that there aren't inspiring leaders out there who can help us see things, motivate us, inspire us. I like to think of, there's a book that I'm particularly, I won't say fond of, just really reverential of, which is by Paramahansa Yogananda, and it's called The Second Coming of Christ. But then the subtitle is The Resurrection of the Christ Within You. And that's really what it's about. Quoting scripture, you can say where Christ said, why do you say to me, Lord, Lord, and you don't do the things which I do? And know ye not that ye are the sons of God? Sons of God, plural. It is intended that we should awaken that universal Christ consciousness, that divine consciousness that is permeated throughout every atom of creation, which was manifest in the body of Jesus, that can be manifest in us. And that's our job. And yes, there are, high souls all around willing to help us, and we just have to ask for it and move into our own divinity. That's, to as many as believed upon him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God. That's not a piece of scripture you hear quoted as often as it should be, but it was central, and it transcends any religion, really, that is in the mystical traditions of Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, the Sikhs, the Sufis. It's what is referred to sometimes as the perennial philosophy that appears throughout the world in all times and places. So I'm just really glad to hear you emphasize that, because, man, it's tempting right now. It's like, hey, somebody come save us. Somebody pop up on, every mainstream media channel at once and say, we are now announcing the global currency reset, the elimination of the IRS, all debt is now gone, and JFK Jr. didn't die and he's going to be president tomorrow, and everybody enjoy the $1 million check that's waiting for you in your P.O. box. There's a lot of those kind of fantasies out there. And some aspects of that may actually happen in terms of something's got to happen with the currency reset sooner or later. But we just need to be wary of this tendency, to sit around thinking, oh, Q's going to, show up and make the we've restored the republic announcement. I don't know, we're American citizens.
Well, it's fascinating. Yeah.
Go ahead.
It has fascinated me when I see videos, and it's something like, Q is going to save the world. And then they begin to posit who the enemies are, and it's all the Democrats or whatever. It's an illusionary spin in which they can play to those savior fantasies, because we really don't know who makes those videos. Could be anyone. And of course, Q is a group of people, and there's fake Q information out there. And so it plays into people's, if people buy into that whole, there's going to be that person or that group out there that's saving us, it opens the door for someone to step in and say, I have saved you, and now I'm going to fix everything. If you buy into that, you open yourself up to start the whole game over again, because they will have, they'll exploit that, and it'll just be changing from one evil ruler to another, faking it, pretending that we're here to save you. Just sit back on your sofas and watch some TV some more, because we've got this covered, and go back to sleep. It's very important that we not allow an instant replay. It can be a different person, same game.
Exactly, and we covered this in a show where we had Reverend Maya Nartumid as our guest, talking about the two timelines. That it's basically a timeline war that's going on here, and 5G is an aspect of that. And this idea that, first of all, the demonization of one political party over another. Yeah, the Democratic Party happens to contain, well, on second thought, let's stay away from that. What I'd like to focus on is what you just said, that the Savior comes in, and there's a lot of stuff happening out there where somebody can just take credit for it, right? And if the global currency reset, for example, happens, debt jubilee, the IRS is obliterated. It's all gone, folks. Here's a check. Everybody's, all the currencies have been reset, and it's asset-backed. Fiat currency's gone away. Oh, happy day. Paradise has arrived. The republic's been restored. Well, now those would all be great developments, and I'm sure going to be dancing as much as anybody else if the IRS goes away. But there's a real danger here, which is that historically, when there is a financial collapse, in advance of it, there's a battle to who is going to control the reset, who is going to buy at the bottom of the market during the collapse, who is going to be positioned to come out on top, and that there is a faction, which we refer to as the rainbow faction, that, not that everything's going to be like rainbows, but they want you to believe that, of the cabal, versus the old guard. It's kind of like the old guard wants a 1984 type outcome where we're all oppressed, terrorized, emaciated cattle, and there's Luciferian blood rites going on, and horrible, unspeakable things done to children. And then there's the new guard who say, hey, let's just give them organic food, and let's give them a currency reset, and let's make them all happy while we're dumbing them down with 5G, while we're controlling them with the implementation of a massive surveillance system. While we're doing all that, let's just let them think everything's hunky-dory, and we'll have a much more docile group of debt slaves to deal with. And so we just need to be aware of that and not buy into the oh happy day scenario. We've got our work to do as sovereign citizens, as American citizens, as sovereign souls, to claim our own power as divine children, hopefully as divine adults. That'd be nice. Anyway, I just wanted to appreciate the whole viewpoint you're bringing in here, Falcon. It's just so valuable in so many ways. Nancy, any of this sparking anything you want to bring in here?
I was just listening to the both of you, contemplating the Savior thing. I will say this, because we're all old enough to remember. For most of my life, I felt that the assassination of John Kennedy was the worst thing that, could have happened to our society in the future, that I didn't get to lead because they assassinated him. He knew too much. He was doing too much. But in recent years, I've realized that, no, if he had been not assassinated, we would have just followed the leader. We wouldn't have really learned anything. But by taking him out the way they did, it was upon each and every one of us as individuals to either buy into it or not. And yes, we did not have the internet, but there were, thousands, maybe millions of people who just kept on researching and finding out what is the truth about this. So when the internet comes along, now you've got a group of people who have a very strong knowledge base of let's just call it the matrix reality. And at the same time, there was an upbeat of metaphysical thought of, but reality is what you think it is. And if you don't like that reality, don't try to change it. It's working perfectly well as a control mechanism. Create your own reality. And the only way you can do that is to become authentically yourselves and step into your own power base. So I don't think I think that for the most of us, we may have learned that lesson. It's individuals coming together, because even we've seen in the 5G movement, it's not somebody standing up screaming, well, except maybe Mark Steele, screaming, the sky is falling, follow me. And Mark doesn't do that. He really doesn't have an organization. He's just giving the information. So, but you've got people out there coming together without a real leadership head. It's not the same dynamics. Would you say that? Because you were involved in that, Falcon. The people coming together. There was nobody telling you what to do or think, right? It was you all talking about it?
Yes. I believe it's the new Aquarian energy, because we are in the Aquarian age now, the dawning of it, and it is about people coming together. The age of the lone wolf is over, as the Hopi said. So when you come together now, it is interesting. Energetically, things can happen in new ways. We did not see in that group, and I think Michael had mentioned this, we did not see the ego games that I have seen in the past in some groups, and I'm not saying that all groups you form will have no egos going on, but it was really amazing to me. A consciousness certainly has risen, because within that group, nobody was playing a dominance games, or you've got to listen to me, or this is the way we have to do it. It was all a group of extremely mature spiritual souls that just came together and said, I can do this. Well, I'm good at thus and so. I can do that. And it all just fell into place so beautifully. It's like we create a shared morphogenetic field so easily now that operates much better than I've seen in groups in the past.
Yeah, I saw that very clearly with the group in Taos. That there was just an accepted way that didn't even need to be articulated. We understood that we had a common objective. People would contribute ideas, and as you say, I can do this, you can do that. Now, it was spearheaded, by Jeannie Lotz and Reese Meyer Murphy. That was undeniable. They were the ones who, they founded is5gsafe.org, the Taos, I forget exactly what it was called, the Taos Commission for
Alliance?
Safe Technology. Yeah, what was it called again exactly? Taos Alliance?
Taos Alliance for Public Health and Safety.
Amen. Right.
Yes.
So that was, to give them credit, because there's nothing wrong with giving people credit and recognition and appreciation for what they did. And you were a big part of that as well. And, Eleni and I up here in Colorado got to go down there and meet with them and work with them and contribute what we could. But it was a beautiful thing. There was really no power games, no ego games, and too often, you form some movement, as I think maybe it was you, Nancy, who said the best way to kill a movement is to organize it. Right? Now you need
Wilhelm
some
Reich.
Wilhelm Reich. There you go. So, it wasn't like we didn't have organization. It was very well organized, actually. But,
yes. And I admire the fact that they took the bull by the horns and stepped up.
Exactly.
Many of us, it's a self-esteem issue or a lack of confidence. And so we don't step up. We say, I couldn't take leadership. I wouldn't know how to do any of this stuff. But the truth is, if you set the intent, the universe will follow through. it will show up. It will grow legs. If it's a project meant to occur, you move energy on it, and it will grow legs. The people that you need to build your website, or the help that you need, the people that know how to do the art or that write well, they show up. So please, I encourage everybody, if you don't think you can do it, but you have a feeling that you really want to do it, it's a nudge from your higher self. Go for it. And I think you'll be delighted with how things come together.
Exactly. We find that in Radio 5G, at our website, 5G-KNOW.com, 5G-no.com, that we've got a page there that refers people to all the other really effective organizations out there, organizations like ehtrust.org, takebackyourpower.net, and others. And we have a state-by-state directory with live links to all the different Stop 5G groups throughout the United States and some overseas as well, because this is all about coming together. And, it's not about somebody as being the acknowledged honcho or honchette, of the Stop 5G movement. It's about all of us coming together. And, it would be great to see one of the presidential candidates have the guts to bring up 5G in a presidential debate. They'd immediately be persecuted and ridiculed, but it's going to become unignorable. So maybe a leader will emerge. Yeah, but in the meantime, we are the leaders. We're the leaders we've been waiting for, and it's happening. And that's, to me, one of the most encouraging things that I'm seeing out there is this, spontaneous harmonic convergence, for lack of a better term, in terms of the people converging harmoniously, cooperatively, with, for the most part, an absence of ego games, domination games, stuff like that, because it's about, service to our Mother Earth, service to our communities. It's not about a service to self, power over others kind of agenda, which, as you say, that's the old energy. That's on its way out.
And I need to point out that this has to be done at the local level. Go to your city councils, go to the county councils. Don't think in terms of state and federal, because the fight has got to be right there in your own neighborhood. Come together with your neighbors. And you have the legal right of the Constitution under the 10th Amendment. Not only are you told that if you see something going very bad, in that the federal government is overreaching its powers within the Constitution, which is absolutely what has happened, then you not only have the right, if the state won't stand up for you, to defend yourselves, you have a moral responsibility. So take it to the local level. It's not going to take but you and a couple of other people to start the thing rolling at the city and the county levels. And once you start it moving there, then you will force everybody, because all you have to do is stop it in your neighborhood. One neighborhood at a time, stop it.
Absolutely, Nancy. And it's not that hard to convince more people, because all you have to do is show them the research that's already out there on 4G, because it shows that the skulls of children are soft, the radiation reaches into the core of their brain, it causes neurological damage. No one in their right mind is going to say, oh, well, I don't care. The more people are aware, the more people will show up to fight on this issue.
Exactly. And I want to just share with everybody quickly, I've just shared the link to our Skype page here, and Nancy will share it. Environmental Health Trust is a really effective organization at ehtrust.org. We're sharing with you, go to their Take Action tab. If you go to ehtrust.org and you go to the tab that says Take Action, they've got so many good tools there. They've got a cell phone and wireless proclamation toolkit, cell phone right to know toolkit, social media toolkit, media graphics, internship, volunteer opportunities, action on 5G. It's a really valuable resource of excellent tools that, as Nancy says, locally, that's where it's going to happen. And it's already happening in hundreds of towns, municipalities, villages, states around the country, and increasingly around the world, that are standing up and saying, no, this is not acceptable, and we the people have a right to defend our families, our homes, our communities, and our planet, our Mother Earth, which is our future. So everybody, again, that's ehtrust.org, and go to the Take Action tab. Or go to Radio 5G. We have lots of other good links for you there as well. Okay. Well, we're covering so many different areas here. It's like just a wealth of material that's coming through.
Can I just ask Brittany Falcon, what's happening with? Are you taking more action in Taos, or where's the stand there in the fight against 5G?
Well, it's not at a standstill, but we are regrouping because we're going to have to approach this differently. We are going to still try to work with Ed Vigil and make the recommendations. We don't have to be an official committee to do so. It's a free country. You can have freedom of speech. And he clearly was delighted to get some constructive suggestions that would protect health. And so we're not giving up. We're going to meet this week and start on phase 2 of how to approach this. We want to find out, of course, what documents from the state they might be waiting for, and find out whether that's in fact even a valid statement on their part.
Yeah. Excuse me. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Falcon.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you regarding Ed Vigil. You're saying that he would, welcome more information, some kind of citizens commission making recommendations. There was definitely some controversy and concern in the wake of the county commissioner's hearing regarding Ed Vigil, because as you're probably aware, 300 people showed up in order to protest 5G. 1,000 signatures, just under 1,000 were gathered, of demanding a moratorium on 5G in Taos. And so you got these 6 county commissioners up there, and they pretty much started out by saying, hey, folks, we appreciate your concern, but, this really has nothing to do with 5G. We're just talking about some change to some language on land use regulations about towers here and there. I don't know who's misled you to think that this is all about 5G. And then Ed Vigil opened up, and he took a big 45 minutes to an hour of just droning on, with technical information. But he opened by saying that this hearing on the change to the language of the land use regulations, which was actually a change to streamlining the permit process for new antennas, it has nothing to do with 5G. He said that. And halfway through that session of the county commissioner's hearing, one of our people had gone back to the YouTube videotape of Mr. Vigil on March 19th, in which he first requested the opportunity to change the language of the land use regulations. He said specifically, under oath, this is in response to applications for 5th generation technology. It was the entire genesis of that land use regulation change was in response to 5th generation. He said it under oath on March 19th. And then on May 11th, I believe it was, he came back and under oath said, hey, this has nothing to do with 5th generation technology. Now, that's ordinarily called perjury. And I would love it if Mr. Vigil ends up standing up, for his position as director of planning for the county of Taos, and actually taking seriously these concerns. But that was a flat out, and I was in the room, that was a flat out, what do they call it, gaslighting of everybody in the room. Well, apparently somebody's misled you folks to think that this is all about some nasty new technology. This has nothing to do with 5G, but since you're here, we'll listen to you. and that was perjury, flat out testified on YouTube, explicit perjury. It's very hard to put a different color on it. Now, maybe Mr. Vigil simply forgot what he said on March 19th, or maybe he was just going with the flow of the political waves coming from the commissioners. But that's a pretty serious matter, and it causes me to have some serious credibility issues with Mr. Vigil and what's going forward, and whether he is sincere in his now openness to, let's hear all about you people form a commission. That'll be lovely. We'll take it to the commissioners who just voted to entirely ignore all of this expert testimony and citizen concern. As you can tell, I get a little heated up because I was in the room. What are your impressions of this, Falcon?
Well, it certainly was highly concerning, and it was being echoed. The same gaslighting game was being played by several of the commissioners who kept trying to treat us as if we were idiots. Oh, no, this has nothing to do with 5G. I don't know why you people are here. As if we were a mob that were being led by a bunch of idiots. Whereas in the Natalina Oliverio, who is one of these what I would call the new divine feminine energy coming in, she went back and looked at that previous video and made a compare and contrast satire. In fact, she made two videos, one where you flip back and forth between the two meetings, and of course that was circulated. I can't think of a better way to embarrass yourself as a commissioner or as any public official than to completely contradict what you said and then have it put together as a videotape montage. So the compare and contrast is glaringly obvious. And any commissioners that might be listening anywhere else in the country, don't try to gaslight people. We're not idiots. And then, of course, she made a satire because he had said that there was an influx of petitions from the telecommunications people wanting to put in 5G. He had said that at the earlier meeting, and then later he claimed he had not heard from any telecommunications companies. And so she did a wonderful satire saying, if we had had an influx of vampire bats in Taos County, and many people became concerned about the influx of, she says, what's the difference between an influx and zero? It's a lot. So that was a hilarious take on it. You open yourself up to mockery, as is due, when you try to play people. And, of course, we have other politicians whom I will not name that seem not to understand that when you're being recorded, and everything should be recorded, by the way. We had our own videotape to record that entire meeting, and I would advise anyone who's going to a county commissioner's meeting, have your own video people so that you have your own record of the entire hearing. So.
Yeah, exactly. We're in an age of transparency now, like it or not. You can't get away with, the smoke-filled room in the back anymore, folks. So transparency is a good thing.
Yes, and then we had Mr. Fambro, who is the city official, and he had said, after the meeting, having voted against changing, against 5G, basically, he voted for, I'm not saying it right, he voted for the ordinance change, which would allow 5G to be set up with basically just a free pass. And then he came out of the meeting and said that he was opposed to 5G, that he didn't want it here, just having voted basically in favor of it. And he said that he would meet with one of the people that was on our group to set up a committee to come up with these ordinances we had discussed, and he's not been returning calls. So there are politicians that talk out both sides of their mouths, and just don't let yourself be conned, folks. You've seen this game. Let's hold people to account. And if they're not protecting the citizens, let's get them out of office. Exactly.
And I believe there are some term limits coming up on the Taos County commissioners. And, not to demonize these folks, but it's just very easy to be listening to, let's say Kit Carson Electric down there in Taos, who have gotten big subsidies to roll 5G out. And, political contributions go here and there, and gosh, suddenly you have the ear of the county commissioners, It's, our government is now pretty much under the sway of corporate influence. There's really no denying that anymore. And I'm not making specific accusations about any of the Taos County commissioners, but let's just say it doesn't look good. And it's our right to take them out of office and say, thank you for your service. That'll be all, because they work for us.
Exactly. We had people testifying as to the severe health effects that they've been having. We have at least 7 women I've met so far, just accidentally, that are having to live out at campgrounds out of their cars because they cannot live in their homes anymore, and they're going to the few campgrounds that have no radio reception for cell phones to escape the EMF. And this is serious business. And yet we had one commissioner who said, "You all have wasted my afternoon. I didn't get to eat lunch." Just talking about this, and it had nothing to do with 5G. So that the arrogance and entitlement of some of these elected officials at this point is egregious. And
right, it's unacceptable.
Got to get involved and just it is, and oust these little buggers.
Right, and for them to not take in the political reality of 1,000 signatures in a town in which that represents 10% of the population, of 300 people showing up at a hearing. And those are 300 people who have spouses and children and families and associations who are all going to hear about the really egregious behavior by those commissioners. And that's just going to ripple all across Taos County. And guess what? That's going to have this vote is going to be remembered. This is one of the things I said in my brief testimony. I said, you need to stop and think that this vote is going to be remembered. 5G gets rolled out and children die. This vote is going to be remembered. And for them to just ignore the presence of 300 citizens showing up on a Monday morning. Yeah, or Tuesday morning, whatever it was. Yeah, that's, okay, you pay the consequences then, because that's what's coming. There are political consequences.
There are, but it takes the good citizens being willing to step up and say, it's not fun to be a commissioner. It takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, and it can be exhausting, but we need a good person in that seat, and I will do it.
Right, so, and it's not like they're paying a lot of money to those commissioners.
No.
To just acknowledge that, okay, we're not demonizing them. And thank God for the 2 no votes, that did stand up and have the guts to vote against the land use regulation language change. But, we're not going to sit still for what's going on. And there are consequences to be paid, not only, to being reelected, but to your reputations down the line, to what will ensue. It's like, oh, that's the guy who voted for that land use regulations that brought in 5G and caused all those cancer cases. That guy over there standing in the supermarket line. I'm sorry, folks. There are consequences in your community when you ignore the people's health and the families and the concern for the biosphere. There are consequences. So we're coming up on the end of our show here. And wow, this has been one of our best as far as I'm concerned. And Falcon, we are just so appreciative of you and your time. Falcon Britt has been our guest today. She is a Reiki master and a longtime educator, animal communicator, and who's also done deep study in the Andes Peruvian medicine. And wow, this has just been a really inspiring, informative time with you, Falcon.
Thank you for the opportunity. I love sharing information with people and empowering people, and it's wonderful to know that there's an audience out there that is awake and involved and awakening to their power. So thank you for the opportunity.
Amen to that. So Nancy, do you have any final comments as you want to take us out into Mr. McCartney's music today?
Well, I do want to tell Falcon to please stay on. We can. I want to Skype with you afterwards. We don't have to do it live, just messaging, because I want to talk to her more.
Yeah, all right.
Because I'm not. I mean, thank you, Falcon. This was amazing. Appreciate you so much.
Well, I appreciate you so much. If I could add one thing that might be good for people to know, so that you can definitely understand how much energy is coming in to support us right now. August the 24th, we have a Venus-Mars conjunction. And Venus, of course, is the planet of love. It's the divine feminine energies. Mars, of course, you've heard the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Well, there's going to be a tremendous shift and a balancing. And I see so much beautiful energy in men now because they're embracing that feminine side of themselves, which simply means, the caring and looking around at what can I support, how can I be loving and gentle at the same time that I am strong and assertive. And of course, in women, when we're balanced with the feminine and the masculine, we become more empowered too. So August the 24th is going to be a great day to do some work as well.
All right. Well, thanks for that. I wasn't aware of that date coming up. Yeah. All right.
Let me mention all this astrology and Mayan astrology, and I am not an authority in any of these fields. I want to be clear about that. It's not what I have studied, but Luna Ash on YouTube has spent many, many years studying 3 different astrological systems, and she shares this on her site. I would be remiss not to mention her name so that people can check her out.
All right. And, of course, day after tomorrow, July 26th, Falcon is sharing with us that that's a major energetic turning point to take advantage of. And this has been Radio 5G with your host here, Michael Henry Dunn and Nancy Hopkins. And thanks again to Falcon Britt. And have a beautiful day, everyone. God bless. We'll see you next time.